in your chair and close your eyes, and we'll take some deep breaths together, breathing in and breathing out, settling in. This is our time to go inward, to relax and just let the chair support you as we breathe together and breathe that beautiful breath of God in and out of us. As we close our eyes and let our bodies relax. Let those thoughts settle. Open your heart. In this quiet space, we become aware of that beautiful beating of our hearts, that steady, beautiful rhythm, pumping that blood through our veins. We feel that strength and that consistency of that beating. Just as we continue to breathe in some deep breaths and let go of anything that no longer serves. I like to breathe in, God is, and breathe out, I am. Beautiful heart that sustains us, that steady rhythm. Now I invite you to bring into your mind a thought of your father or that father figure that has been in your life, that person who supported you and loved you through all of the times of your life. The good things, the not so good things. I invite you to picture them in your mind's eye. The one that you claimed as your dad. Whether they are still on this plane or have since moved on, I invite you to see their face before you. And we're going to go into a moment of silence. And I invite you to express any feelings that you have, anything that you want to say, because we know there is no separation. We are always connected. There is only life. And so I invite you to use this time in the silence to say those things to this one who means so much to you in the silence. Whatever it is that we experienced growing up, as we have become adults, we know the truth that everything that we have gone through up until this point has gotten us to this place where we are today, has gotten us to who we are today. Even through those trials and tribulations and challenges that you experienced in your growing up, it's all been part of your spiritual growth to this very moment, where you can know and understand the truth, that God was in the midst of all of that throughout the thick and thin of your lives. And so we're grateful for those who guided us, who helped us, who watched over us, who listened to us, and witnessed our journeys into adulthood. And so in this stillness, we claim this affirmation of truth. Centered in God, my heart is steady and strong. I walk in faith and I trust the unfolding. I'm going to say it one more time. Centered in God, my heart is steady and strong. I walk in faith and I trust the unfolding. Now breathe into that truth. Let it fill every part of you, because you are always supported. You are always guided. You are grounded in divine strength because it is who you are. Take one more deep breath in and let it go. We're so grateful for this knowing and for these teachings, for all that is, for all that we are, and for all that we are moving into and through together in spirit. We say thank you. And now we begin to bring our awareness back into this room. Remembering we are the peace and we are the power. And we're so very grateful. And so it is. And whenever you're ready, just open your beautiful eyes. So, I realize that not everybody had great experiences, with their dads. I know several people whose dads made their transition when they were so small that they never really got to know their dads. And so someone else stepped into that role as a father figure. That's mostly what happens, is a stepdad or someone else, or maybe even mom played both roles and had to become that. Fortunately, I had one of those wonderful experiences and got to witness my dad until he was 88 years old. So I got to experience that. Not only that, I was so blessed. I lived in a town where both sets of grandparents lived. Oh my gosh, I was really, really blessed. A lot of people never knew their grandparents, or they lived so far away they never had that experience, right? And my dad was an only child, and I was the only girl. My grandmother sewed clothes for my dolls with petticoats, and I had a child, and my grandfather was a carpenter, Opa, my German grandfather on my dad's side, and he built me little wooden chests for my dishes and stuff like that. I had an idyllic childhood compared to many, many. So I know a lot of you didn't have that, but hopefully some of you had some wonderful experiences with your father figure. That photo that was in the slideshow that I gave to Reverend Eileen, that picture of me and my dad, is taken in a bass world in Buda, Texas. That was our last birthday celebration together. And we went out to lunch nearby there, and then he wanted to see that place, and we went in there, and I had my brother take that photo of us. That was the last time that we got to go out together on our birthdays and celebrate. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't always, as I was younger, see my dad as the strong, steady heart that we're talking about today in our talk, because I sort of felt like my mother kind of ran over him, and he was, you know, being not as strong as I wanted him to stand up to her more than what he did. And so I didn't see him as what I thought I wanted him to be, right? But oh my gosh, as I was growing up and as I became an adult, I realized what a steady, strong heart he had. The man was wise. He knew how to pick his battles. He was a peacekeeper in our family, you see. Very different interpretation of what my young eyes saw than what my adult eyes saw. He was a saint. Honestly, he was amazing. He was very quiet. When I was 10 years old, he bought me when I was 16 years old, he bought me a guitar that was really old in a pawn shop. I think he paid $10 for it. And it was because I had a desire in my heart to go with the Christian Medical Society to be a part of this mission trip. And the only way you could go is if you played an instrument. And I played the piano, and I couldn't take the piano. So he bought me this guitar, and I taught myself the chords. And I learned Cristo me amo. I learned Las Mañanitas. I learned all these songs in Spanish because that's where we went. That trip when I was 16 changed my life. Changed my life. And he knew that meant something to me. He knew how important that was to me. And he helped make that happen. 2 or 3 kids from my church, from the Lutheran church that I went to, joined with all these doctors and dentists and went into the inner parts of Mexico where there's barely even any drinking water. And here we were doing dentistry and doctoring things in these little one-room schoolhouses. And we sat outside and entertained the children so the parents could get care. It was an amazing thing. Just an amazing thing. So he was a bookkeeper, and he kept books for usually lumber yards and stuff like that, and then he would do taxes on the side for businesses to try to make ends meet. He was a wonderful provider and a very hard worker. And I loved him dearly, and I learned a lot from him. When I was beginning ministerial school, I'm a late bloomer. I put this off for a really long time. And he told me when I was in ministerial school, I hope I'm still here to see you get ordained. He made it to my ordination and lived 6 months past. And so I brought a photo today, and I put it out in the community room because 20 years ago, when I became a licensed Unity teacher in that church in Texas, 5 of those people are gone now. There's only me and Ron Scott, my minister, in there. But I want you to see the photo because that's where it all began. First a prayer chaplain, then a licensed teacher, and then a minister. And my dad got to see all of that. He got to see all of it. So we have an affirmation and a theme for this month that I think is so important. Our theme is I am confident. Let's say our affirmation together. I am bold and confident. I live with divine audacity. I love that. I love that so much. So I found a quote this week that I thought was so cool. It says, boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. That's why after I chose this title that I was going to do for today, I tweaked it a little bit because I decided I wanted to talk about the father of unity, Charles Fillmore, because I spoke about Myrtle on Mother's Day, and it feels like we're closing this little circle of history of the unity movement, because I know we have a lot of new people who don't know that Charles and Myrtle are our co-founders, because Charles had this tenacity for learning and a drive unlike hardly anybody else, and that perseverance paid off because we have the unity movement that we have today because the two of them got together, and now we have this way of life. Charles Fillmore, I have pictures, thank you, Bob, for putting these up. The young Fillmore and the older, wiser Fillmore up here on the screen. Charles was born in 1854, and he lived till 1948. He lived 93 years. And you know, he and Myrtle formed Unity in 1889 from a very small group of people that were gathering in their home, learning about prayer together and learning about healing together. And that's what started this now international movement. So today we honor and reflect on this quiet and unwavering strength that helped shape this unity movement, a strength that was found in the leadership of Charles Fillmore, because, you know, Myrtle was known often for her radiant healing consciousness, because her healing is what started this movement, her compassionate beingness and the prayerful life that she left, the presence that she was around anybody and everybody who came around her. Charles brought this deep, passionate, consistent spiritual discipline to this work. He had this mental strength that helped anchor the mission that the two of them had for bringing unity into fruition. And similar to Myrtle, he also had a transformation and a miraculous healing. And so I want to talk a little bit about his early beginnings, because he was an unlikely mystic growing in an untamed wilderness of Minnesota in the 1800s. You know, Charles's beginnings were like the opposite of Myrtle's beginnings. Myrtle came from upper middle class, right? At the age of 2, Charles Fillmore was kidnapped by the Sioux. The Sioux Indians, because he lived right there. That's where he lived, right? They brought him back the same day and left him on the doorstep. Wow, isn't that interesting? Imagine that. I know, I thought that was hilarious. At age 10, he had a skating accident and he broke his hip. And for 2 years, he laid in bed. And all these different healers and doctors tried to work on him, and that leg just wouldn't, that hip would not heal. And they did some grueling things to him. Back in the day, they didn't have the kind of technology that we have nowadays. And they tried all kinds of weird things on poor Charles, and it didn't heal. He almost died of it. And at the end of the whole thing, his right leg would be 4 inches shorter than his left. He was an interesting man. He had probably every conceivable job that you could possibly imagine before he settled into real estate in Kansas City. He worked as a printer, he worked as a clerk in a store and in a bank. I think he followed the gold rush out for a while and did a bit of that, a little bit of mining. But there was a turning point in Charles's life that I think is so critical, and that's when he found a tutor. He found a tutor who shared with him the works of people like Emerson and Shakespeare and Tennyson. Her name was Caroline Taylor, and you see, this was a turning point in his life, because at that particular time, those were the same lessons Myrtle was getting in the Oberlin College for Girls. She was getting the same transcendentalist background that Charles was getting from Caroline, the tutor that he had. And you see those lessons, that turning point set his heart on fire. And he wanted to explore the works. And he began a relentless exploration of spiritual teachings that left us with this whole series of books that he wrote and a whole multitude of sermons, talks that are in the Unity archives at Unity Village. And all of this was part of his growing understanding of his relationship with the divine. So I told you on Mother's Day about their sweet love story, about how they met in Denison, Texas. You can't make this stuff up, that these two people from different parts of the world were in the same city, in the same building, in the same event, at the exact same time when Myrtle read the last poem that she had written. And that was it for Charles. He knew he was going to marry her. That was all it took. And so Myrtle's healing really is what inspired the whole Unity movement. And it's what inspired Charles to look more deeply into the practices, to learn about prayer, to learn about meditation. Her healing began his own work on himself, and he grew his leg several inches over the course of his lifetime, and using these principles that we teach. They launched the Modern Thought magazine, which turned into the Unity magazine that we have today in 1890. And you know, it served as a platform for sharing spiritual ideas. People could not get enough of their messages. They were always writing Myrtle at Silent Unity and asking for advice. Silent Unity was founded in 1890, and that's our 24/7 worldwide ministry that serves millions of people, embodying the power of affirmative prayer. And I think the Fillmores would absolutely love the fact that there are now apps on your phone that you can have a Facebook Silent Unity prayer service every day, Monday through Friday. I do one of those every month. It's such a wonderful thing. The accessibility, I think Fillmore would love the fact that people can pray in so many ways now and get prayer support. And then they established the School of Christianity, for which we are still graduating ministers and licensed teachers and credentialed people. It provides all the education in metaphysical Christianity, creating that foundation of leaders that our world needs, and our students are worldwide. Creating a building committee. Charles had an idea, a divine idea in 1902, because they had outgrown all the space that they had. Everybody was gathering, and they couldn't gather together in any of the buildings that they had anymore. So in 1902, he formed this building committee. And sort of, you know, as a joke, one of the board members said, "I'll put the first penny in." So he threw this shiny new penny into the pot. Well, that penny kind of stayed there. It became a quarter in about a year, and by 1905, it was just $600. And so finally, some of the board members started throwing in, like, "I'll put in 100, and I'll put in 100. And one of the board members went and mortgaged his house and took that money, and they bought the 913 Tracy, where was the very first beginnings of the Unity movement. I have been on that property. It is an amazing thing if you go to Kansas City to go see where Unity first started out. There's so much history there. It's just amazing. But you see, it took vision to hold out, to know that it was going to become a reality, just like us in our building. We know it's going to become a reality. So Charles began writing profusely. He wrote Christian Healing in 1909, and I'm using that as our closing today. He wrote The Revealing Word, which is fabulous, Keep a True Lent, 12 Powers of Man, all of these wonderful books that he has written. And then there were books written about him and his life as well. So they founded Unity Village in 1920, which I'm going there tomorrow to watch David Beard walk across the stage and get his licensed Unity teacher. Yes, yes. He helped to oversee the development of the Unity Village in Missouri, now the movement's wonderful headquarters and spiritual retreat center. And it was in 1924 when they started Daily Word. You know, we just celebrated that anniversary last year. July 1, 1924 is when Daily Word started. That campus now has an amazing award-winning performing arts center that they made out of the activity center. They raised something like $3 million, and oh my God, I cannot wait to see it. It was in process on my way there last time. It wasn't done, so this time I get to go and see it. And then, of course, the miracle of the 5 principles, which came out later from the work, but it's rooted in our teachings. Charles's philosophy emphasized the divinity within, the creative power of thought, the affirmative prayer, our spiritual practices, and living the truth we know, unshaken by outer appearances, which is what's so important for us today, grounded in spirit, in a tireless pursuit of truth. Charles Fillmore modeled for our movement a steady heart, unshaken by outer appearances, grounded in spirit, and tireless in the pursuit of truth. In addition to all of the work and study that he did, he had an incredible love for his wife, Myrtle, all of their life. And he loved his mom, Mary, who, you know, I told you last Mother's Day. Mary's the one that cooked and cleaned because Myrtle had a house built without a kitchen. Yeah. So Mother Mary was Charles's mother, Myrtle's mother-in-law, that took care of the family when they were doing the work at Unity. So he loved the boys they raised, Lowell and Rickard and Royal. He would often tell Myrtle, I'm going to headquarters, which means he was going to do his meditation and prayer work. And he did it long periods of time. That's where he got his inspiration for much of the work that he did. His strength was in this inner devotion that he had to spiritual principles. He was such a thinker. We always think of him as the head and Myrtle as the heart. He was a thinker, a writer, and a visionary. But more than anything, he had a tremendous faith and trust in God. Through the years of study and contemplation and experimentation with spiritual law, he modeled for us how a steady heart, grounded in spirit, becomes this force of clarity and direction. He provided for the Unity movement. He didn't rush to conclusions or react to any circumstances. He listened deeply and affirmed consistently and walked the path of truth, no matter what people were saying around him. You know, one of the coolest stories, I think, was they were building Unity Village during the Depression, mind you, where lots of people didn't have jobs. They would have people come out and carve those magnificent wooden doors that are in the Unity buildings there, and then they would feed them, you know, because people were hungry. People didn't have jobs. They couldn't feed their families. And the Fillmores had a capacity to do that, to open Unity Village to people who needed some food. And so they would work and then they would feed everybody. That's the strength, you see, that we need to draw from today. That strength and that vision and that trust. It's a reminder that in our own lives, it's not always the loudest declarations, but it's our steady choices, our steady, consistent, unwavering faith that really shapes our lives, it shapes our experiences, and it shapes our relationships with others, doesn't it? So I want to take you to Scripture today. We are in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. You know this one, it's one of my favorites. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. That was the Fillmore story. They never in a million years had in their mind at the beginning of forming a worldwide unity movement that is worldwide. When I do the silent unity prayer service, I see people coming in from Nigeria. They're from all over the world. It's amazing. And we now have daily word outlets in many countries. Millions and millions of daily words go out. A lot of people don't even know unity churches, but they know the daily word because their grandma gave it to them years and years ago, right? So this scripture is about how we become conscious and increase our faith when we have a spiritual practice, when we use prayer and meditation in our lives every day, and we listen to the deepest impulses of our soul. When we pay attention to that, that is what draws us out, and that is our faith and our conviction in knowing and our expectation. Just like the Fillmores had of their vision, we have that vision for our own lives, don't we? We have that same vision. Because you see, when you have that kind of boldness, when you have that boldness and that faith and that trust, it's sort of catchy. It's a little bit contagious, isn't it? I want some of that. I want some of what she's having. This is exciting. Let's get on board. Let's be a part of this. That's what the Fillmores did. People wanted to be part of their vision, and we are glad that people wanted to be part of it to help them bring about their mighty work. So today, as we celebrate Charles Fillmore's legacy, let us also call forth the power of our own steady hearts, that part of us that stays centered in God, that stays centered in the knowing of who we really are, that holds the vision through storms that we witness, that trust the unfolding of Spirit's perfect plan. Because you know, this is the strength that builds movements. This strength is what changes lives. It's like our mission and our vision statement. We want to inspire love and peace in the world, don't we? That's what we want to do at Unity Church of Peace. We want to be that, so we inspire it in other people. Because that's the strength that changes lives, and that's why we're all here. All right, enough preaching. Time for a little joke. So this little boy has a visit from the aunt. The aunt comes up to the house, and he runs up and he hugs her, and he says, "I'm so glad you're here." And she said, "Well, thank you, sweetie." And he said, "Well, now we get to find out about Daddy's trick." And she said, "Trick?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You know, I heard Mommy telling Daddy that if you came back to visit again, he would climb the walls." Oh my God, children are so honest, aren't they? Oh my God, I know. I wonder if she stayed or if she turned around and left. So this is Charles's Christian healing. I have two little pieces I want to close with today. So just take in these words. We should have faith in our own power, capacity, and ability. If we are to have this faith, our thoughts must be centered in the great universal mind. Success lies in God. Have faith in the innate goodness of all men and all conditions. Do not condemn, no matter how great the provocation. What you think, you create in your own consciousness. Enlarge your range of vision, and you may see good in what now appears evil. God is good, God is all, hence there can be no real condition but the good. Why should we waste our time fighting evil? If we build our character upon faith, understanding, and love, with the great I Am as the focal center, we shall become pillars in the temple of God. And that's the way it really is, folks. God bless. Thank you. I'm going to call the ushers forward now as we prepare our gifts. And whether you gave automatically or through the website, through Breeze, however you did that, we are so very grateful. So let's say our blessing together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, that this is so.